everybody doing? Oh, come on, you can do better than that. How's everybody doing? So it's truly an honor to be here at my alma mater, Emory University. From 2000, since then, I've always wanted to come back and just give back. And this is our opportunity. So let's take a moment and journey into the justice. And so as a young man growing up in Atlanta, born on Peachtree, I looked up to certain individuals who were just legendary, who were just luminaries of the justice movement, and one of which is Representative John Lewis. But as a young man, growing up in Georgia, you live in the shadow of Dr. Martin Luther King. And Dr. King actually lived 3 houses down from my dad's house. And so he knew Daddy King, and he knew most of the King family. And I would always ask my father, what type of person was Dr. King? What did he think about? What did he do? And one of the most great experiences of my life is meeting Dr. Bernice King and getting Dr. King's last book. And it's kind of fitting in the situation that we're in to listen to the words of Dr. King in his final book, Community or Chaos, Where's the Community Going? He wrote it in 1967 on the Isle of Jamaica for about a month. And he talked about the things that are going on right now, the need for communities to come together around the issues of white people and the Negro. Of course, it was the 60s, so they used terms like that. And now we're in a third Reconstruction, something that Reverend Dr. William Barber talks about a lot, the third Reconstruction. We can talk about the issues that a lot of minority communities have, as well as a lot of majority communities have. Because Dr. King always said that once you realize the issues of economics and education and families are universal. And so when I spoke with Representative Lewis, he always would say, and you guys have heard him say it, it's time to get in some good trouble. It's time to step out and call out what's right and what's wrong. And that's what the movement we're in right now. We're in a movement for justice. We've moved from civil rights to social justice, but it's the same movement. We can use the same tactics, we can engage the same audiences, and we can change history just like they did. So I got contacted last year after the march for Black Lives here in Atlanta, which was in 2016 in July, by some young ladies, some lovely individuals about having a march. And they said, we need to have a march in Georgia to reclaim our identity of all of us and come together in unity. And we started at the NAACP headquarters, and Aisha and Gina and Janelle, so many others were so instrumental in putting together this march. But we didn't know what we were journeying into. But one day we woke up on that January 21st of 2017 to this: the largest civil rights demonstration in Georgia history. We saw individuals from North Georgia, from South Georgia, East Georgia, West Georgia, and all over the metro area coming together in one voice and one moment. It wasn't about Donald Trump, and it wasn't about pushing back, and it was about reclaiming Georgia. And I must admit, when I walked out of the Center for Civil and Human Rights, I didn't know what I was walking into. But when I came around the corner and I saw people on the hillside, and I saw people in the street, and then we got to the stage, and I saw all the way back, I saw a throng of humanity: black, white, brown, yellow, gay, straight, able, and otherly abled individuals ready to march, ready to send a message to our elected officials. And we've been doing that ever since. And people ask me all the time, Mr. Griggs, how do we get involved with the movement for justice? And so that's why I'm here today, to tell you all it takes is one thing: putting one foot in front of the other. Because I'll be honest with you, before this, I wouldn't consider myself a civil rights activist, a social justice activist. I just was a human being, a Georgian, an Atlantan, who saw a problem, who saw division being sown in our country, and thought back to the founders of this country and said, you know what? They've always protested something that was tyrannical, something that was taking them a place they didn't want to go. And so we decided to put together a march. But it wasn't just a march, it began a movement in Atlanta, a movement around the country to reclaim what we all find so fundamental, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now that journey has taken me a lot of places. We've protested health care. We've protested the lack of action by our elected officials, but more importantly, we've given civics lessons on the corner. Because this country is about the people. It's not about the powerful. It's not about the elected officials. It's about the voice of the people. And so when we talk about a justice movement, we're talking about empowering you with your constitutional rights in action. You know, I get to try a lot of criminal cases, and I try some civil cases, and I always get to talk to a jury. And I talk to 12, sometimes a misdemeanor 6 individuals, and I talk about the most fundamental rights you have as American citizens. And I always talk about voting. But the most fundamental right you have as an American citizen is to sit on the jury. Is to gauge what our system is going to look like. And then as I was becoming more active, I started to realize we have to spend more time with our elected officials. We have to spend more time educating them on how the process really works. Because we have a lot of talking heads that go around the country and go around our city and go around our state and tell us what they want us to know. Well, it's time for us to tell them what we want to happen. And that's what this movement is about. That's how you get involved. We started having town halls on the corner. We started having civic engagement seminars in the streets. This is not what the media will tell you. They will tell you it's a bunch of women with pink puffy hats on. It's a bunch of young African-American males, you know, yelling at the police. No, it's not. It's a teach-in. It's a civics lesson. It's America living out loud. And it works. It has many names. You can call it Black Lives Matter. You can call it the resistance. You can call it something new. You can call it the March for Our Lives. You ask how you can get involved, you join. I love the talk was a few minutes ago about Instagram. Instagram is an open platform, and that's where most of the organizing occurs. It occurs on Facebook. It occurs in social spaces where it cannot be filtered by the media. Because what I've learned about some of these movements is that there are people that would like to see the movement die. People that would like to see the awakening stop. And it's time for the awakening to continue. Because everyone that's in this March for Healthcare is asking for one thing, a universal right. The right to have responsible health care so you can live. Is that so crazy to ask for? But how do we get that? We have to have conversation. We have to have conversation with our elected officials, and that's becoming increasingly difficult in this environment. But when you decide to step out and elevate your voices in these public spaces, you get invited certain places to have the conversation. We got invited to the state capitol to talk to our elected officials about what the people really wanted, about what the people need. Sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't. So in this new social awakening, we have a responsibility. I was talking to Dr. Lafayette, one of the chief architects of the civil rights movement. I've talked to Dr. Lowry, I've talked to Dr. Vivian, and they tell us something. They tell us, you guys have tools that we never had. in our movements. You have the ability to communicate instantly information. You have the ability to communicate pushback instantly. You have to use that. But you also need to understand you are interconnected. There's no difference between me and you. We just have to build those relationships that move into movement. The tax march was wonderful. We were pushing back to get tax returns from our president. We still don't have those tax returns, but we had another teach-in about taxes and how they work and what you can do to require your elected officials to return them and give them to you. You know what? The one thing that I've learned in this journey for social justice is that we have a lot of allies. We have a lot of individuals that want to get involved and want to understand how it works. There's an organization, it's called the Georgia Alliance for Social Justice. It is the organization that put together the Women's March here in Georgia, and it's also the affiliate of the Women's March National. And what I learned when I had conversation with Tamika Mallory and Bobby Bland and Carmen and all of the women of the Women's March is this. They were normal individuals, normal organizers who saw a problem and decided to make a call to people of good conscience to come together. And that turned into 4 million people around the world protesting. And they said it was not just a moment, but it was a movement, and it was time. And it's time again. Now, let's talk about something that we have been talking about a lot these last few weeks, the NRA. This is the NRA protest when they came here to Atlanta last July. Dana Loesch and the president and David Perdue were all down at the World Congress Center talking about we need more AR-15s and, you know, the Second Amendment is the most important thing ever. Now, let me get something straight with you. I'm an attorney. I know what the Bill of Rights say. Everyone is entitled to the right to bear arms, but you're not entitled to have military-grade weaponry to kill children. What we have to do is to continue to push back, and we pushed back on that day, and we will continue to push back. So you're asking what you can do to get involved? On March the 14th, there's going to be a walkout in every high school and in every college around this state. You need to join. It's called the March for Our Lives, Georgia. Go on Instagram, go on Twitter, go on Facebook, and join. Because we told the NRA back in July that we weren't going away, and we're still not going away, because let's just be real. What comes before the Second Amendment? The First Amendment. The right to freedom of speech, and the freedom of assembly, and the freedom to tell your government what you want, not a special interest group. The NRA is a special interest group. I think I heard 45 talk about he wasn't in the pocket of a special interest group. Now, this is one of the most important things that I've learned on this journey for social justice. I was on American Race with Charles Barkley, and we got to talk about the issue of race in America. We got to have this conversation. The conversation is this. There are forces in this country that want to sow wedges and division among us, and we have to push back. This is 2018. It's not 1950. It's not 1850. We're not going back to some far gone history lesson where everyone didn't have rights. And we had that conversation where we talked with the individuals across all spectrum, including one that we got to talk about. This man, Richard Spencer. Now, I had the unfortunate occasion to meet Richard Spencer and talk with him about his beliefs in the alt-right before Charlottesville. And my total focus was to use social media and big media to expose him for what he is. He's a white supremacist. John Lewis told us how we deal with white supremacists. C.T. Vivian told us how we deal with white supremacists. Dr. King told us how we deal with white supremacists. We confront them. We deal with them. We teach them. But we also have to teach the country that this cannot be tolerated, because the nonviolence is about speaking with your oppressor, but it's also about speaking with the audience, the greater audience. And there needs to be a conversation in this country that no one is trying to take white men's rights away. What we're trying to do is to empower everyone to have equal rights. That's what the arc of justice is all about. And Dr. King said the arc of justice is long, but it bends. The arc of time is long, but it bends towards justice. And that's all we're asking for. That's all this movement is about. Now, we are in Atlanta, the birthplace of the civil rights movement. We have been given this mantle of change. The former president said in his last speech that you need to go have a conversation with somebody that's different. You need to go have a conversation with people you don't agree with. And then you also need to do one other thing. You need to lace up your shoes, you find the problem, and you go deal with the problem. That's all this movement is about, whether it's the civil rights movement or the social justice movement. And that's what we're expecting. I'm expecting that you join with us so that we have the entire community coming together, whether it's in the March for Our Lives, whether it's in the movement for Black Lives, whether it's in the movement for LGBTQ rights, whether it's the movement for Me Too and women's rights, or whether it's dealing with sexual predators that are running through our country, like mute R. Kelly. We have to deal with these issues because, like my daughter asked me on the night that the election was lost, Daddy, did evil win? And I had to say to her, yes. And then she asked me one question: what are you going to do about it? This is what we're going to do. We're going to raise our voices, and we're going to change, and we're going to empower others, and we're going to fight back. We're going to take back our country, but more importantly, we're going to move forward together, because stronger together and not one step back. So I thank you for your time. And I hope you guys join us in the movement for justice.